Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. To subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com.
Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. This is episode 7, and we got an interesting topic today. I'm here with my good friend, Ray Warren. Ray, how are you?
I'm doing well. Beautiful day. Things are good. A lot of world-changing events going on lately, so I'm keeping up and having fun. Yeah, I'm excited about this discussion with Rachel.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and as I teased it to our audience, saying we got an interesting topic, then I just sort of left it hanging. So it's really how technology, which has become totally integrated into our lives, is impacting communication, marketing, branding. Sort of interesting. I actually went on CNBC on Tuesday of this week that we're taping to talk about how President Biden used X, Twitter as I still sort of call it, to announce that he wasn't going to continue his campaign. So that was a curious drop from CNBC's part. And the question was, well, should CEOs or marketing executives or heads of sales use direct messaging with social media and use that technology more directly? Ray, what do you think about that?
Well, I think some do it a lot. Some get kicked off the platform, some don't. So there's risks and there's rewards. And I think, yes, I agree 100% because I think everything is, not everything, but there's so much word of mouth marketing that goes on now. But that can cut both ways. So it's got to be kind of curated before you start doing that. What's your message? What's your goal? What's your objective? All those things. But I think it's a powerful, powerful way to reach people.
Yeah, that's sort of, I think the reason I was asked to do it was because, not that I had anything to do it, I'm long removed from Anheuser-Busch, but sort of the Bud Light fiasco using social media and not understanding the power and the breadth of you could do something very small or perceived as small, and all of a sudden it becomes a global phenomenon. So if you start to put that asset
one way or the other,
right, and it was interesting, and I won't name her name, but a woman who's started a company to start convincing CEOs to use it directly said, well, it's okay to make a mistake as long as you're using the medium. And it's like, and my comeback was, well, it's one thing for Elon Musk or for Tony Ponturo or Ray Warren to use the medium and screw up because X is a private company. You and I are private individuals for all intents and purposes. But, Bud Light didn't use it properly. To your point, you should be, studying it, researching it, and really thinking through the strategy. Bud Light became the third beer brand today versus the first beer brand, and that company lost billions of dollars of shareholder value. So
that is a really, really mistaken proposition. Back in the day, I think if you said something in the press that was like, happened to me once, never happened again, but I got quoted badly. And I was young and new in the business. I'm like, oh, well, there goes that career. Good thing I know how to cook. And it went away. I talked to people like, oh, God, this guy killed me. I'm like, it'll be gone like by tomorrow. And it was because it was a newspaper or a magazine. The internet is forever. There was no such thing as viral back in the day. You didn't like start heading people out. You might call and say, oh, did you see the thing about Ray and the Adweek? No. And maybe some did, some didn't. But to say that it always used to be just make sure they spell your name right. Good or bad, you just want them to spell your name right. And I think that was very true. And that article went away and gone. But that doesn't happen anymore. So to say something like that is someone who doesn't understand the viral nature of the world we live in and the permanent nature of the things that we say and do that show up online.
Yeah, and it's a balance. One of the things we've been trying to do with this podcast is in a way show the difference between a baby boomer and those that are not, whether you're Gen Z, millennial, Gen X, because we all have come up through life in a different way. And so a lot of these big corporations have sort of flushed out, if you will, the 50 to 65-year-old who's has 15 or 20 years of experience to the benefit of younger people, which is great, but maybe not so much experience. And sometimes you just need, maybe this is a little prejudiced opinion, that older voice, more experienced voice to say, well, wait a minute, did you think of this? Did you think, and to your point, someone saying, well, just try it, and if you mess up, that's okay, is not really thinking.
No. Right. Yeah, I think you're right. And I think there are a lot of companies that do like having a wisdom voice in the room, on a board or on, some type of committee. And then there are others who feel like we really don't need that. And that varies by company and maybe their success rate. That would be an interesting thing to know, right? If you took a look at all the companies in the tech world, and how are they all just, a whole lot of Z's and millennials who are just cranking and working as hard as they can and faster because God knows those computers are quite powerful. But do they have a voice? Do they have that kind of voice? And I think it'd be interesting to see what the performance would be like of the companies that do and the companies that don't. It would be like a lot of work. But if I was a company, I'd certainly want to look into something like that. Like maybe we need to bring in someone to give us just another point of view. And I think a lot of companies probably do that. It would be shocking to me, either from their VC fund or whoever put the money in might be, an older person and saying like, I also want to be able to have a voice in what you guys are doing and gals.
Well, and it's sort of, and I know get a lot of perspective from our guests, but it always bothered me, the original venture capitalist gave the young people billions of dollars for Uber. And they learned that they spent it, they partied, they had crazy stuff. Like there was no adult in the room, right? And it became a mess to where they finally had to change management, get someone in there with some experience. But it always baffled me that supposedly a bunch of smart people that could raise billions of dollars would hand it over and say, okay, make it work, while this money was being spent frivolously and recklessly.
It is one of those things. There was a story not too long ago about a guy complaining about how Amazon handled their upfront presentation and how long people had to wait in line to get in to the venue. And I posted, I guess it was on LinkedIn, but what you're saying is that there were 1,500 people trying to go to the Amazon upfront presentation. So if there is no need for an upfront and there is no need for, legacy anything, why did all these young folks, why? Because the shrimp is good and the champagne flows and the party's nice and I want to meet a celebrity. And that goes back to the point of buying new things at Uber and great parties and furniture, blah, blah. There's a human nature that will never change, and that is rewarding yourself, satisfaction, pride, all those things. That's not a metric.
Well, and I think this is setting it up nice for our guests. You and I, and we don't have to, mention the age difference of our guests versus us, but we started in the business as media buyers with 3 television networks, and ABC, CBS, and NBC. No wonder we had big lunches with the salespeople, because it was like, how long did it take to manage through 3 networks? Then we were there as observers and part of the business when someone said, I'm going to do 24/7 sports. And I remember very vividly when Ted Turner would go around and try to sell 24/7 news and TBS, and he'd be there in the morning with a styrofoam cup with his tobacco chew and be spitting the juice in the cup. That was his personality sales pitch. And then we saw the internet. We used to have at Anheuser-Busch people say, give us $50,000 and we'll give you 2% of the company. They just wanted the credibility. And our president and CEO said, you guys just worry about selling beer. You don't need to be getting a piece of fill in the blank.
It's not the business we're in. It's not the business we're in.
Our guests and those that are part of that generation, they walked into life with, oh, of course you have 400 channels and you have smartphones and you have apps and you have social media. Um, but we actually saw it build from the original foundation of zero.
Yeah, well, it goes from the lobster in a pot theory, right? If you are a lobster in a pot and they turn the heat up, you don't really know exactly what's happening and you kind of adapt as best you can. You drop a lobster in a pot of boiling water, it knows exactly what just happened for a nanosecond. And so I think we were more lobster thrown into the pot, whereas the younger generation who grew up with all these things, this is life. This is how it works. And for you and I, it was like, oh, good, something new. Like it used to, hey, 3 days of the networks, I don't want to go on about that, but it was, 3 weeks of really hard work and 49 weeks of changing the primetime schedule and making good and, begging people to buy a little bit more because we didn't sell enough in the upfront or whatever, or the other way around.
Exactly.
So, yeah, got a lot more complicated for this young generation, and they've been through a lot. So, I'm very much aware of this world we live in.
Well, I can almost feel our guest host jumping through the screen trying to get into this conversation. So we're going to introduce our guest. Her name is Rachel Blatz, and she's a UK designer. Design. I did it again. I don't know why I keep saying.
I don't say UK. That's all you say.
That's right. And what's funny is, and I'll give myself. I have a big sign here that says UX, and I still can't read it. You can even have prop notes and still mess it up. A UX designer. So with that sloppy introduction, let's meet our guest host, Rachel Blatz. Rachel Blatz, how are you this morning? Did we scare you at all with that conversation?
No, you didn't. I have heard scarier, so it's all good. How are you guys?
Tell us a little bit about you, and particularly, first, a little bit about you personally that you're willing to share, and secondly, what a UX designer actually is.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, where to begin? How much time do we have? So I have been in the web design industry for about 3 years now. I started as a graphic designer, but I eventually found this thing called user experience, and it really resonated with me because it's all about creating good experiences for the people around you. And I am a very empathetic person, so it just felt like a very natural fit for me to head in that direction. I think what's so cool about UX, user experience, is that it's been around for so long. It's a relatively new job title because we see it connected with digital products, creating a good user experience for the people who are using the products. But it's actually been around for a really long time, right? Like you guys have been creating user experiences for your customers before that term was even coined. So it's a lot of fun. It's changing, of course, because we're now more so in the digital world, but I'm excited to talk to you guys about how you have created good experiences for your customers and, how I can bring that into my work today in the digital field.
Yeah, I think when you and I talked a little bit offline, what was interesting is that you said that Ray and I had utilized user experience in our past before technology. And that's everything about, your sponsorship of a sporting event, and how the customers participation and experience at a football game, a baseball game, a hockey game, etc. Going to a restaurant and bar, what's that experience? How do you present the product? How do you present? I can tell when I go into a restaurant and bar almost immediately what its attitude is in service and quality, making the customer happy, or not, or the opposite of it. It's almost an immediate reaction. Ray, I won't speak for him, is a big concert goer, music lover, and so how did that experience go on? A quick aside: a few of us went to a Sebastian Mancuso concert in Savannah last Friday when all the IT stuff was blowing up, and they literally had people, it was like the old days, with tickets, and they couldn't read your Ticketmaster phone with 10 your tickets. So they just said, How many tickets did you get? Okay, here's the thing. Anywhere in the building, you had to go because there was no other choice. And it's an arena that almost every seat is good, but it was a quick learning experience of how it was 25 years ago, 30 years ago versus today. Ray, I'll let you input there a little bit.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the first part about user experience and then talk about concert going. User experience, I always looked at user experience as, I had a TV audience and a streaming audience. Let's call it a screen audience. I had my employees and I had my customers. And so those were the user experiences that I had to work, right? If it was a presentation, if it was a hospitality area, anything that ever went wrong, I was what I used to call, I always need a throat to choke. I was the throat to choke. Ray, what happened? Like, where's the shrimp? Or, Ray, what happened? Why isn't that? There was a typo on the screen. All that crazy stuff. And so that's why it's funny. It's like therapy. That's why I'm A, B, C, D, E, because everything had to be right? Every camera had to be in the right spot. Every announcer had to know his stuff. So much, right? And making sure all the spots ran and making sure that all the announcements about brought to you by, those all had to be, something was going to get back to me later. And so the better preparation I could do, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, the less I would hear about anything other than great things. But to go to the, so I guess that's my user experience, right? My users were those folks, not people who would necessarily, I can't wait to hear what you do because clearly I know all about frictionless user experiences and bright and bold and engaging, but I want to hear how you make it. That's very interesting to me. But going back to concert going, I went out to Vegas, my wife and I went out to Las Vegas to watch U2 at the Sphere. Wow. The Sphere is a reinvention of the concert experience. There's nothing I can explain in words. And I wonder what happened, like when that tech outage happened. Because I don't know, there's nothing. I mean, I don't know what could have happened. I would be really interested to know what happened at the Sphere on that Friday when the tech world blew up. So again, just the difference between complete immersion where you're not even watching the band. We were at a U2 concert. I think I looked at them for 4 seconds. The rest of it is just this immersion in audio and video that's nothing like anything else. Going back to going to Central Park and crashing the gate, just like there's so many people taking tickets and so many people trying to get in. So if you just waited for the guy to be distracted, you just walked in. And I went to so many Central Park concerts because I was young and stupid, and I just snuck in. So that's my.
Rachel, what intrigued me, and now we're going to throw this to you and educate us, but was this all a lot about human behavior, and your observation of human behavior and how it all fits into design what you're designing. So why don't you take it from there? How do you go about your job, and maybe give some examples of something you designed and how you went about it?
Right. Yeah. So, Ray, before I get into that, it's really interesting you talking about wondering what the tech outage would be like at the Sphere, because there's the user experience of the Sphere, right? But then there's also everything goes dark and maybe they need to get, the user wants to get their ticket money back because they didn't have a good experience. How is that user experience for them trying to talk with customer service to get a refund? And everything is like an added layer of user experience, which I just find so fascinating. There's a user experience underneath every user experience.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, it's brain blast, right? So the way that I test user experiences now is actually through this testing platform called usertesting.com, easy enough. And I can put in a link to a live site or a link to a prototype that I've designed. So let's say that I want to get information on my company's pricing page to understand what the current pain points of the user are, what friction points they're running into, and even what they're enjoying about the experience. I can write specific tasks and questions for them so that I can get a better sense from them what friction points they're having and where they're running into these issues. So then I can take that data and I can turn it into a better experience for them. So we actually did redesign my company's pricing page, and there was no clear link or journey to the main pricing page to a product pricing page. And users were getting really confused when they were clicking on a CTA that they thought would bring them to the product page.
What's the CTA?
Call to action, a button.
Okay.
It's
I
like,
had to get that in
it's
there.
like a CPM.
Fair question. So
CTA.
users would be clicking on a button that they thought would lead them to the product pricing page so that they could learn more about the product. But
Right.
instead, they were met with a pop-up form that asked them for their contact information. And all of our users were really frustrated by that because they felt like we didn't give them enough forms of trust or enough information for us to be asking about their contact information. So they immediately left the page, and we saw that happen with every single test. So if that's happening with, the 15 tests that I ran, that's probably happening on a way bigger scale.
For
and
sure.
therefore we're losing a lot of customers and a lot of revenue. And this is one of our biggest pages because it's the pricing page. So we actually found a way to increase their experience on the page by creating a quiz at the beginning, asking how the user would want to, how they would use the product. And then we gave them a breakdown of all of the information of the product within a table below. And so we gave them a lot more information to go off of. So when the time came for us to ask for their contact information, they were a lot more likely to give it to us because we actually gave them an experience worth trusting.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's really, because I think this is, and for all the right reasons, I think everyone's just we're much more uptight about privacy and a little bit more suspect of people out there who are asking for stuff. So it's probably even harder today than it was back when Tony and I were doing things. And so that's a really interesting story that I would never even thought could exist.
Yeah. It's really, really fascinating to look at past data and understand how it can inform all of your future designs and decisions. And, I mentioned to you guys, I think what's really cool about this podcast is that what we're doing right now is I am learning about your past experiences and how can that inform my generation for future decisions. So again, going back to the idea that everything relates back to UX and the user experience, it's a really, really cool topic. And I just love how it may have changed from generation to generation, how we are providing the user experience, whether that be in person at a concert or through a digital product. But the basis has always been there, right? Trying to create a good impression for our users.
So as I led sports groups at NBC and Telemundo, I had a sign on my wall, not digital, just a sign with a couple of different kind of sports fields. And it basically said, if you serve the fan will serve you. And that is really that'll do it. Serve the fan. They want to serve. They want to give back. They want to participate. They want to be part of a tribe or a group. Even if that's purchasing, I have a buddy who's looking for walking shoes. And so we have a bunch of guys on a text chain, and I love Hoka's. They're really light and they're good. Yeah, but Asics are cheaper and blah, blah, blah. And you get this whole sense of everybody wants to participate in life,
Mm-hmm.
So the user experience is pretty important.
Hey, everything you can choose. I mean, going back to what your sign said, you prove to your user or your customer that you understand them and that you empathize with them. And the user is now buying into that feeling of empathy. They're coming back for more of that because you are creating a brand or a product or experience that is showing to the user that you trust them. So I think the trust and the empathy is huge.
Sure.
Yeah, it's interesting as I've worn out Ray over the years, the Anheuser-Busch
Not
one.
yet, Tony. Not yet. But
But
46 years and counting.
no, that's right. We'll see if we, after
See if we can make it to 50.
podcast 100, if we're still talking to each other. We will. But, the whole bit of, Anheuser-Busch was making friends as our business. And it really was an attitudinal thing, which is, you don't have to be a bully. You don't have to take things too serious. It's beer, right? And it's a social product that you should enjoy with friends and just understand what it is. And I would think, particularly in this world we're currently in, which is, pretty edgy and pretty divided and in many cases very violent, how we all address whatever that product is in a way that people just feel comfortable. You said it, Rachel, and safe, and there's integrity and honesty is really key, and to me, it's all about observation. And what all of this is saying is, I get kidded by my wife because I'll sit at a gate at an airport and go, the pilots haven't arrived yet. Now everyone else is reading a book, But my observation is the pilots haven't arrived yet. The flight attendants aren't here. We're not going to be on time. End of conversation. And all of a sudden, here come the pilots, of course, and the flight attendant. And, we all hear the engine noises and stuff on a plane, which is, oh, they just turned off the engine, so it must be mechanical. We're not going anywhere. But all those things, I think, are sometimes a little obnoxious, but it's also about observing around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can actually tell that. My first thing I do when I get to an airport gate is the plane at the gate.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, okay, the plane's here. So that's a good start. Like, we wait for the pilots. Like, my only point is I'm as neurotic as you about things, and sometimes more and sometimes less. You're waiting for the pilot. I want to make sure the plane's there.
Exactly. And you want to feel that people are in charge, so it's sort of interesting when you were talking earlier, Rachel, and now let's see if you want to ask a few questions, but it's sort of like with the stuff you're designing, it's sort of like when they tell you when you're writing an article, don't bury the headline. You write everything, but you sort of lost what you really wanted to say. And I think the old saying when your presentation, tell them once, tell them again in the middle, and tell them once at the end what you really want them to take away from, which is so key. And August Bush III used to say, like, using the old analogy, what time is it? And he would just want to hear 2:00. Now, if you wanted to tell him how the watch was made after that, he maybe give you a couple minutes, but don't tell him how the watch was made. And, there's 12 numbers and there's two hands. And by the way, it's 2:00. I don't want to hear that. Get to the point. What's the user experience? And then if you want to elaborate, go from there. So I would think a lot of your designing is sort of don't bury the headline, make it easy to get across what you're trying to do. And then if there's other bells and whistles, that could be support, but make sure you don't bury the headline.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually read a great book recently called Don't Make Me Think, and it's all about web and mobile usability. And there's a chapter that talks about if you have a page worth of information, a page worth of copy, cut that in half and then cut it in half again, because users are not reading all of that. We skim, we absorb 4 to 7 words at a time. And then whatever you're repeating in that piece of content, make sure you repeat it throughout the page because users are probably missing it. So I think, the headline is really important. You probably have to write that same headline multiple times for people to actually absorb it.
Rachel, what do you think your best skill is, your best attribute in doing this work the right way is? What's your home run talent in doing this right?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you look on Google and you search what is the top trait of a UX designer, it will say empathy and communication. I would say that I am extremely empathetic. I really like to understand why users make certain decisions, what emotions play into those decisions, and how I can help create a better experience for them. So I am always the friend that my friends come to when they need advice or they need help. I'm really good at understanding what they're saying and trying to help figure out a solution. So that kind of translates into what I do for work. I'm listening to the interviews that we're giving to our users, our customers, and I'm understanding what their pain points are and how can I design a product that makes it better for them, that gives them a better experience. And this might sound super tacky, but you never know what someone's going through in their day to day. So somebody could have a really, really bad day and they could log on to your website or your product, or they could go to a concert and have a really bad experience with security, or they could have a really confusing time in my product trying to find what they're looking for. And that could have just been like the straw that broke the camel's back. They already had an awful day and now it's even worse. And if I can do anything to make people's day better, I will. And I've found a passion in that and being able to really understand people and just create meaningful experiences for them.
How do you do it? I want you to ask us questions because I think Tony and I could ask you questions for you.
Yeah.
But that's not going to fly with our audience because we're trying to have a good user experience.
Yes.
But so how do you do that? I mean, you writing code? Are you like designing? I mean, how do you make a page better?
Yeah. I'm absorbed in it every day. So sometimes I forget that people just have no idea what this world is. So I work in a software called Figma. And that's where we're designing our web pages, our products, and then we can actually prototype those. So I can link the different frames that I've designed, the different pages of my design, and I can link them together and put certain interactions. And then you can actually click through it as if you are going through the product itself. So it's a super high-tech software that I honestly still have a hard time understanding, but I design the product and then I hand it off to a team of developers to actually code it and do the hard nitty-gritty stuff. So I feel like my job is very easy compared to the people who actually develop the product.
Right.
Here's what always amazes me, and I know we're probably starting to run up against the clock a little bit here, but I always wondered with people with your brain power, Rachel, which is a lot bigger than my brain power, and those that are in this whole tech world and computer world, what did those people do 50 years ago? Because that brain power is sort of God-given, if you will, or at least it's a natural element. It's sort of tough to develop. You can develop it, but my brain would not get anywhere near being able to develop anything in technology. So I'm always sort of curious. I don't know if there's an answer to this. It's just more of like, what did these people do 50 years ago? There was so much wasted talent that didn't get utilized. It's just sort of sad in a way.
Well, I think you are definitely not giving yourself enough credit because, both of you have been so successful in your own ways and you used what you had at the time, just as I am. You guys were creating incredible experiences, whether that be your ability to sell something, creating an amazing advertisement. You guys were doing exactly what I'm doing. It's just you were using what you had. So I think it's the same level of brain power, just different.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
Items being used.
Yeah, I agree. I think what Tony shortchanged himself on was that you said I don't have the brain power to do the tech. The tech wasn't there. You used brain power in a different way. So when Rachel was speaking, I was thinking about, you're talking about the pricing page. So I don't know what the company is, but it's a product that sells and has a price and do that. So it's called retail therapy, right? And you talk about somebody having a bad day. Somebody having a bad day, they go to the mall. This is 30 years ago, right? They get in the car, they go to the mall, they walk around, all the inventory is in the store, the pricing is in the store, and now you're connecting in a different way, right? The scent of the store, the layout of the store, the window dressing, all those things, that's the user experience. Now the window dressing is on the website, and there's less to work with as it relates to, you just can't browse. You can, of course you can. But like there's not a lot of eyeball incoming, there's a lot more, I got to look for stuff. So that all is, again, that's what Rachel's world grew up in. And we grew up in go to the mall.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think this is a really interesting kind of connection of the worlds, really, about how we just adapt to what we have at that time and use all the brain power, which is no more or less than it was. It's just working on different things.
Right. Yeah, and I'm curious. This actually leads into a question I have for you guys.
Good.
How have you guys drawn on human behavior to impact your advertisements, your ability to sell, all the experiences that you created when you were my age? Because I think there's, yes, I'm now using technology and I'm using testing platforms to get all of this data on our users, but I don't really know anything different, right? I grew up around all this technology. So it would be interesting to hear from you guys before all of this technology existed, how you drew on human behavior.
So I'll go first.
Go ahead.
So if it goes from selling so I was always selling. I mean, I believe that everyone is always selling. I don't care if you're Brian Roberts, CEO of Comcast, who's selling to the board, or Ray Warren selling the 30-second spot to the Chicago Bulls buyer. There are certain things we love. People love video. So you would always start a presentation, whether we were trying to get a new client when I was on the agency side or sell the Olympics to Coca-Cola. You have a nice short video because people just love video. And then we'd have a presentation, and then that gets into user experience. Some people will write I went from an agency that the upfront was an 80-page presentation to an agency where they spent 3 times the money and the presentation was 17 pages. And so you have to know your customer and you have to know what works. And so those were the tools we had at the time. And what I always used to say about presentations, because we'd be up till 3 a.m. doing a presentation, and we'd have an 8 o'clock breakfast. So we'd all go to bed at 4 and get up at 7. And I would call a presentation as like what Jerry Seinfeld calls, the joke is never done. You can always make it better. And so every time I'd look at a presentation, they had to stop showing it to me because I would say, okay, we have to go to bed now. Otherwise, we'll do this till we have to go to the breakfast. So I think it sounds a lot analogous to what you're doing, just a little bit more, different tools, right?
Yeah.
Rocks instead of blades, kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's people that can read the old Budweiser label, the current Budweiser label, but the first 2 words are genuine and authentic. And I think that's what, to me, marketing and branding doesn't change in 200 years. It's just other tools to present it. And it's, a brand or a human being who I feel is a brand as well is about, being relatable, relevant, honest, integrity, and pricing. Get your value. Sorry if my dog is coming through the sound here. But and those are things you have to keep in mind. It's fun, it's relaxed, it's casual, and for what we did, and you have something called beer, which is alcohol, which had certain state legislators who wanted to put more excise tax on it, who wanted to ban it. It was and I had many meetings with state attorney generals saying it's a legal product. We're marketing it, responsibly. And, we bring, a certain level of enjoyment to the consumer in a fun and not harmful way, as long as the product's not abused. So I think that was the ultimate umbrella theme. And then as you execute sponsorships, you're sort of doing someone, I don't know if it was Ray or Rachel, used the word tribal. And I always felt sports were tribal. Like you could be in St. Louis, Missouri versus New York City. And having lived in St. Louis for a long time, it was very insecure market. Well, we're not New York. But if the Cardinals won the World Series, you could say, well, our team is as good as any other market. We have a big stadium just like New York. We have a hockey team. So this is our tribe, and we're good because our sports helps reflect that. Or you're the Green Bay Packers, in the small little community that has a stadium as big as any others. So it's about, I think our theme here is it's about we're all in this world together. It's about feeling comfortable with people, talking to people the correct way, having respect, having integrity, and that will move any product as we go forward. So,
Yeah.
So
I
we want
think
more questions. We want a couple more questions because Tony and I always say we're going to get to more questions from our guest host, and we don't often do that.
Yeah, I got one more for you guys.
Good.
Well, I'm curious how your mindset has changed around the digital world. I've, of course, listened to all of your episodes now, and I think it was in the first or second episode where it seemed as though you guys, felt very strong about going to work in person was better than being remote, and just being in person was a more successful way to get things done. And so I'm curious if you've learned anything from this conversation or just talking to people on previous podcast episodes. What have you learned about the digital world, or has that perspective of yours changed at all on it?
right.
Tony, you want to go first, or I'll go first?
I can go first.
I'm the leadoff batter. Tony cleans up.
Okay,
I thought you threw it to me. Okay. Anyway, no, I don't think I was never a believer, even back when, in the early podcasts. I think remote is fine. I think hybrid is the answer. I just don't think 100% remote is. I just do think that human connection is important, and that it needs to be made on a somewhat regular basis. And I would probably do it a little bit differently. If everybody's coming to work on Wednesday, because Wednesday's the day, then it's the worst outcome. But just if you tell people we'd like to have you here once or twice a week. And I do think for young folks trying to move up, it is good to get some face time with, if you want to move up in that company. Look, the way people change jobs now, they get their raise by changing jobs, they get promoted by changing jobs, because again, we talk about it being more of a lateral world. So, I was never hardcore 5 days a week and get nervous when the boss gets in the elevator, which you folks don't do anyway anymore, which is very cool. But so, yeah, I think it's, it hasn't changed much, but it wasn't radical in my mind. Maybe what I'm saying is radical: hybrid work and try to see your boss once in a while. If that's radical, guilty.
Yeah, I agree with you on the hybrid. I feel human interaction is really important, and you learn from other people, and you may be stimulated on a topic or an idea that you never thought about that said, that's worth sort of investigating. I think I've learned, I can remember fighting even using a PowerPoint presentation. We had these old antiquated acetate machines. They finally had to throw all these acetate machines, which were a film thing, which you project your presentation on the wall. They had to throw them out of the building to force the people to go to PowerPoint and use their computer. And then I can remember saying to myself, I'm never going to watch, look at the news or sports on my phone. I'm going to still watch, CNN and ESPN. Well, it takes a lot for me to turn the TV on because it's all right there.
I'll also say it's quite possible that we're not with it. That really, because we didn't grow up the pandemic changed everything, and we were not working. Well, I was, so I kind of saw it. But we may be off. Maybe the remote can work for lots of people in lots of companies, and we just don't get it. It's possible. And you can get promoted, and you don't have to see your boss, and you don't have to make the human connection. That's a little bit more what Tony and I grew up with.
Right.
But we're looking in from the outside, not from the inside out. So I'm willing to say that guilty is charged, because that may not be the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
What do you think, Rachel?
Yeah.
Well, I think what you mentioned about the human connection and interacting with your boss is huge. I think that I've been in many rooms with coworkers or, friends at a bar, or people that you're meeting. And just because it's in person, it doesn't actually mean that it's a better experience. I think that you can definitely provide the excitement and, just as much through a camera as you could in person. I've met my fair share of people who are still very quiet in person. So the
It's true.
The screen definitely makes it more difficult. And I think it was kind of awkward at first, having to adjust to that, being forced into it through the pandemic. But there's so many more benefits that I think have come to it. Like I travel a lot. Gosh, I don't even know what state I'm in right now because I'm just always in a different one. So I can travel while I work from anywhere in the world, which is really exciting. So I definitely think the pros outweigh the cons, but I do agree that the human connection is the most important part. So if you can learn to do that digitally, then I think you're set up for success.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Ray, why don't you take us home? Why don't you close our podcast? First of all, thank you, Rachel. This was great. I think we continue to say we learn, I think, as much as anyone here, and hopefully our listeners learned a lot as well.
Yeah. No, it's quite an amazing thing. I thank you very much for joining us. I think it just opens up another whole level of conversation, and I think the key to all this for us, and I hope you saw that when I said guilty, but maybe, is that we're open. We're open to learning and understanding, and we know the world is changing, and we know that you guys are the world that is changing it. So, this was just a wonderful time. And because we worry about our user experience as it relates to the length of the podcast, because again, these things I could talk some more, but I wish you safe travels wherever you go and success in your career, and really enjoyed having you on tonight.
Yeah, thank you both. This was a lot of fun.